Women and girls represent just about half of the world's population and therefore also half of its potential. Unfortunately, there's still a long way to go to achieve full equality of rights and opportunities between men and women. So we all have to stand together if we want to effect change. Today on Shak, we have Tonni Brodber, who is the interim representative with the UN Women Multi-Country Office Caribbean. Prior to this, she served as deputy representative from 2015 to 2020. She's also held positions as team leader for the Advancing Gender Justice in the Pacific program with the UN Women Fiji Multi-Country Office and gender specialist for the United Nations Development Program in South Africa, as well as briefly with the UN Women South Africa Multi-Country Office. Tonni also established what is now the UN Women Country Office in Haiti. Welcome, Tonni, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. You did a great job of getting my name right.
Good. So the United Nations continues to champion the important work needed to improve the experience of women and girls across the globe. Can you give us a bit more insight into the work done specifically by UN Women?
Sure. And I think, I really want to take a moment to applaud you for how you articulated why gender equality is so critical. One of the main issues that we're still seeing as one of the most insidious forms of gender inequality is violence against women and girls. So one of the main things that UN Women does is we support governments and civil society in developing really good response strategies. Where do you go? Who do you call? When you go to a police station or you call a number, will you get the kind of services that are required? We also try to do the work to make sure that we prevent violence against women and girls. So what kind of research needs to be done to understand what causes it, and how can we develop programs once we know what causes it to really change attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs so that people are free from lives of violence. I feel like it is important to understand that the issues we see facing gender inequality are at the root issues of all of the underdevelopment we see in the world. And so that is what we do. We work on the leadership, we work on the ending violence against women, but we also try to get to the root causes of this discrimination so we can have a world that is more equal and equitable for all.
Okay. So you have been working at UN Women for several years and enjoyed what seems to be quite an illustrious career spanning the globe. Tell us a bit about your career path within the organization and about your current role.
My particular career started with UN Women, with violence against women and girls, ending violence against women and girls. I started off as a consultant working in Haiti to support the different offices that were working on projects to end violence against women and girls for the Trust Fund to end violence against women and girls. Now, a little bit about me, my mother used to work with the UN. Okay. And I decided very early on I was never, ever going to work with the UN. As a result, because I was saying, man, she working all the time. She looking kind of stressed.
Yes.
I don't want to work for the UN. And then I met someone at the time. I was doing filmmaking, which is something that I love. I wanted to be an actress, but I didn't have the courage to go through it fully. And so I was doing filmmaking and I did a film on Haiti. And then someone was speaking to my mother to say, I'm looking for someone who does know something about Haiti to assist us with some work that we have to do in Haiti. And my mother said, that's interesting. My daughter had done a film and that was it. But the person remembered and followed up with me. And I decided to apply for a short-term consultancy to go to Haiti to do this work for them. And that person's name is Roberta Clark, and she has been a real mentor for me, whether she knows it or not. Some of those women you look at from afar and you think, wow.
Yes, how amazing.
Yes. I love how her mind works. I really there were so many things that she embodied for me just by being that I decided I wanted to emulate as well. And the way in which she worked in the organization she worked for didn't seem as UNE as I thought the UN was. And it was true, you know, UN Women, and at the time UNIFEM was a very different kind of organization, a little engine that could and did for women and girls.
Okay. So that's how you kind of started. What do you do, you know, what do you do now as the interim representative, or maybe perhaps even as the deputy representative? What does that mean?
You know, really, what does it mean? People always ask you, what do you do? And you start rambling and then you realize I'm not helping. Basically, one of the things that I do right now is I ensure, when I was deputy, I managed the programs for the office. So any program that UN Women was doing across the 22 countries and territories that we cover in the Caribbean, English and Dutch speaking Caribbean, I was making sure that we were technically coherent, that things were going to be implemented on time, that we were thinking about things that were not confetti, as our executive director speaks to, but things that are resonant, that reach women and girls, that make a difference in persons' lives. And for us, that means a lot of technical support to governments and civil society organizations to support policy and legislative reform, and then the programs that make those policies and legislation come alive.
Okay. It sounds, I have to say, pretty interesting. So what would you say success in your current role looks like, or what do you want to achieve in this role?
Generally, you're right. It is very interesting. We have some really interesting days, and then we have some days that are pretty mundane because, like anything else, they're good. There are excellent and really exciting parts of the jobs, and then there's the other part of the job where you just have to get certain things done, and it's not the most interesting part of the job. Success for me right now looks like, one, a happy staff. I think you have to start within your organization. We recently lost our commander-in-chief. The former representative passed away in June to cancer, and you know, it affected all of us very deeply. So for me, making sure that the staff is feeling happy and supported is important. And not only that, but also making sure that the staff understand why we are where we are and what we're supposed to be doing, which is service. So that is success to me, one. Two, success means that people in the Caribbean know what we do and why we do it. So that means that there would have to be an understanding that not just because women are graduating from UE in larger proportions than men, that we've achieved gender equality. That people understand that even though women are more certified, they still don't have as much employment, and they require more certification to get the same jobs that men have. So that's going to look like success to me. Another thing that will look like success to me is that the governments feel fully supported by UN Women, and the civil society organizations feel supported by UN Women. And what that means is that they feel that, you know, if they have a gap in their services, they know they can come to us and the UN to get better understanding of how they can close those gaps, and the finances they need, if it is a possibility, or the technicals they support that they need to fill that gap.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about, I guess, the challenges that women face, and you called out, you know, violence against women as one of those challenges. But, you know, women face a myriad of challenges across the globe, including violence, wage inequalities, poverty. You know, what do you see as the biggest or the most significant threat to women in the region? Would you say it's domestic violence, or maybe you have a different perspective?
I think this most significant threat to women in the region is the belief that women are not equal to men. That's the most significant threat, because that threat underlies domestic violence and intimate partner violence. That belief underlies unequal pay. That belief underlies a lot of child sexual abuse that we see, and incest, where young girls are being abused because girls are seen as objects for pleasure and not human beings, fully formed with decision-making power. And also it underlies the insecurities that we see among women. and some of the choices that they may make that are not necessarily sustainable for them and their lives.
Okay. Would you say that that's comparable or in line with the challenges facing other women across the world? Or would you say it's unique to our, that some of these views are unique to our part of the world?
I think that challenge is a global challenge,
Mm-hmm.
and the way in which it manifests itself is what is different in the different parts of the world, right? So
Okay.
in some countries, it is much more extreme than it is in the Caribbean when it comes to violence against women and girls. In some areas, it may manifest as female genital mutilation. In other areas, it may manifest as higher levels of femicide, like we see in Latin America, where women are murdered more.
Mm-hmm.
So it the belief, unfortunately, is a belief that I think is a universal belief, and that's something that we have to address as a globe. But it is something that manifests itself differently throughout the world and in different countries.
Okay. So the UN Women's Strategic Plan 2018 to 2021 outlines, the strategic direction, the objectives, the approaches to achieve gender equality and that kind of thing. We're almost at the end of that period now. How do you think UN Women has progressed against its goals?
I am so pleased you have done your homework. I think that UN Women has done really well, and I invite you to visit UN Women's website because this is our 10th anniversary. We're 10 years old this year.
Well,
And we have a
congratulations.
video. Thank you. We have a video that demonstrates what we have been able to achieve in those 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
What we acknowledge, though, is that we have a lot further to go, but we have been able to achieve a lot in 10 years. And you'll be able to see how many women have been able to benefit from the programs that we have done, whether it be economic empowerment programs, ending violence against women programs, or women in leadership programs. That video speaks perfectly to it, and it is only about 3 minutes, and you may recognize the voice on the video.
I will definitely go and look for it then. So, as I said, we're almost at the end of that period. What does the next strategic plan cycle look like? I guess what are the key strategic goals for the future? Are they similar to what we had in this tranche, or are they different?
So that really now depends on what our partners and stakeholders want from us. We develop our plan, and this is Women at Work. This is the care economy that you're hearing in the background. What we're going to have to do, and this is what we did when we developed our last strategic plan, is we really had to sit down and think through and consult. What do our partners want? We have to look at what we've been able to achieve. Where were we most strategic? Where do we need to do more work? And where do our partners want us to be? That's what informs our next strategic plan. Okay. So we're in that process right now.
Okay. And I guess the other thing I was wondering is, do you think that some of these objectives that will, form part of the strategic plan, if they will be reshaped in some way by the COVID pandemic, I suppose?
To be honest, no. I say that because what a pandemic, like what COVID does, or any other hazard, whether it be a health hazard like COVID or a environmental hazard like a hurricane, what they do is they exploit inequalities further, or any kind of gap that we have further. And so we have to do the work that we have to do to make sure that women and men in this world are resilient to any potential hazard. Okay. And that means the work that we do is as relevant now as it's ever been.
Okay. So I think you mentioned a little bit earlier about, female leadership, and there've been lots of discussion recently about the positive impact of female leadership at this time in the COVID pandemic. But when we look at the numbers, are we satisfied with the number of women participating in politics and in decision-making positions?
No, we need more. That's one of the things we're very clear about, is that we need more women in leadership. You have a critical mass, which is what is referenced by the Beijing Platform for Action, is 30% of women in leadership, and globally we're not there yet. Okay. There are some countries that are further ahead than others. But the issue is not just about the numbers. Yes, we want the numbers. The
Mm-hmm.
issue is about having persons in positions of power who are transformational and who believe that gender equality is an essential element of development.
Okay, fair enough. So I know you've had responsibility for advancing gender justice in previous roles. I guess what are some of the key gender justice initiatives being undertaken by UN Women, particularly those related to, as I was discussing, women's participation in politics and decision making and that kind of thing?
The specific project that you're referencing was one that was related to access to justice
Mm-hmm.
and women's political participation. So one of the things, I don't know if you've ever had to deal with the law or go to court before, but not just for anybody. It is
Thankfully,
scary.
no.
Exactly. It's very scary. It can be overwhelming. And especially when you have cases that are sensitive, like sexual assault. So
Mm-hmm.
this is why we had that program to really look into how we could make it easier for persons to access justice. Because why have this beautiful justice system if those who are in most need of it are not utilizing it?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we did also touch on gender-based violence, and I think that was another thing, as you said, that was kind of magnified during this COVID experience. So I know some of the programs to reduce this kind of violence include collaborating with men and men's groups. So maybe you can tell us a bit about those kind of campaigns, and have you found them to be effective?
Yes and no. I think the issue is you can't, and you said this earlier in our conversation as well. We live in this world with men and women. For the most part, if we don't collaborate together as a human species to make the world a better place, we're going to be in challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So not only do women need to be sensitized and aware of why we need to advocate for women's empowerment and gender equality, but we also need men to be engaged as well.
Yeah.
They need to see it as a problem if one of their brethren is talking about or making light of something like rape or violence, or intimate partner violence. Men need to be able to be in a position to say, nah,
Mm-hmm.
no, that's not cool, and also change behaviors and attitudes around things that we've normalized.
So as I said, I know that there were a couple campaigns that were done. I do remember Mikey, who's a local artist, being involved in that. But are these campaigns that you think you'll continue to run? And as you said, you think they are effective in most times.
It really depends on what the objective of the campaign is. Is the campaign supposed to just raise awareness of an issue? The Unite campaign was supposed to raise awareness to end violence against women and girls. That's where Mikey first came in. Then he became a he for she champion, a man who champions gender equality. Um, the fact that you know about it means that we have at least some success in that people are speaking about it and talking about it and knew about it.
Mm-hmm.
The other objective of campaigns would be to change behaviors, to make people really sit down and think through why they believe the things they believe or why they do the things they do. And that is a little bit harder to measure when you have a campaign, but it is also something that is critical to do. And that's something that we are doing more work on right now.
Okay. Yeah, so I was also wondering if you think similar, well, I guess this is kind of the lane you were going down, where similar programs could assist in, I guess, rebalancing the burden of care work and, dealing with existing inequalities in, the gender division of labor. Perhaps some of these campaigns could also help with, I guess, reshaping some of those ideas. So I think on one side of the equation is the rebalancing of care work. But on the other side of that, I guess, is improving women entrepreneurship and, market participation and that kind of thing. So maybe you can tell me a bit about what UN Women is doing to improve, I guess, entrepreneurship opportunities and why that might also be important.
The entrepreneurship opportunities, our position is to support women entrepreneurs and ensure that there are policies in place so that there's a more enabling environment for women entrepreneurs. There's a new series that will be out soon, produced by two women, called the Pivot Series. And one of the things that's interesting is that most women go to entrepreneurship not necessarily out of want, but out of necessity. And what we want to be able to do is support governments in creating enabling environments so that women can go to entrepreneurship because they want to, because they feel that they don't have to. There's good care for their children. They have the support and financial means to be able to do so because financial institutions are taking them and their ideas seriously.
Yeah.
So we have a program in Jamaica called Win-Win, where we work with not only women-owned enterprises, but also larger enterprises that are prioritizing gender equality, so that we can create more successful policies for women who are in the world of work or who want to be entrepreneurs, connecting and networking women entrepreneurs in Latin America and in the Caribbean.
Okay.
But this other issue you raise, I think we should talk a little bit more about it. And that's the issue of the care economy. You're hearing my care economy right now, right? My unpaid care economy. We have to be able to do the work within society so that there is a belief that women are not the only ones who are supposed to be taking care of children, that it is really a partnership. If it is only one person doing the majority of the work, it becomes very hard for you to do that work when you're at home now with COVID.
Yes.
Who's being expected to teach children if schools are not full-time?
Yep.
Who's supposed to sit down with the child as they go through the course? What have businesses done to make space for working parents or single parents who are going to be expected to have a child out of school 2 to 3 days a week? Right?
Yeah.
These are the kinds of things that UN Women does. We actually have a action brief on our website, guiding companies to think through these things. Like, you can't ask people to work from home if you don't recognize what is happening in their homes.
I agree wholeheartedly. So hopefully somebody is, going to your website and reading that and taking these things into consideration.
Well, we also sent it to the organizations directly, so don't worry.
Okay, good.
Good cover, we also sent it.
So I know UN Women has also developed some interesting media-centered initiatives, like the collaboration with the Media Compact and with Netflix. So maybe you can just give me a brief rundown about those initiatives.
We actually have an initiative with the Lost Tribe right now called the Unlearn series. And you can see the videos on UN Women's website, Facebook page, as well as Lost Tribe's Instagram and Facebook page. We did it because we wanted to be able to ensure that Caribbean voices and a diversity of Caribbean voices were centered discussing issues relating Black Lives Matter, gender equality, and women's empowerment.
Okay.
And one of the sessions had a director and a lawyer. Her name is Annalisa Chapman, and she was speaking specifically about the male gaze in film and the fact that a lot of films are done from the perspective of a man. And with men as the audience in mind. And what UN Women's partnership with Netflix was about was highlighting films by women, about women, or one of the two, right? So as I told you, I'm a failed actress and not a great filmmaker, but I did my best. Part of the reason is you want to see your stories. You want to be able to demonstrate what your life actually looks like.
Yeah.
And too often in a lot of films, women are objectified. Women don't have full stories. Their story is just one to facilitate that of the main hero, the man.
Yeah.
Why not tell everybody's story? And that's what we need to get more of. Let's talk about these things. Let's tell our stories.
Yes. So, I mean, the other question I had from that is, do you know if the Netflix, is it available in this region? I really would like to add it to my watch list. I don't know if you've watched, if you've
Yeah, it's a curated series. It's like curated. You could just go at the time and you click on the UN Women and you see all of the curated. It's basically a curated set of films
Okay.
by women directors and male directors, but basically what are the films that highlight women's stories.
Yeah. So, well, I'll go check it out because sometimes Netflix
Yeah.
is kind of wonky. Sometimes you can't get it in this region. So I just hope that we get.
I got it before, so hopefully,
Okay.
because UN Women is global and Netflix is global, I believe that they did their best to make sure it was accessible in all regions.
Okay, perfect. So lastly, I mean, we're on the topic of movies, and you mentioned, about how you wanted to be an actress, and you did direct and co-produce a film on Haiti. So I was just curious if, do you have more films in the pipeline or dreams of making more films?
Oh, I always have dreams of making more films, and I keep thinking through, what my life could have possibly been like. I'm pretty sure I listen, it's 1% of people who make it. And at the time it was like 1% of 1% because black women and dark skinned women weren't necessarily prioritized. In fact, one of my acting teachers told me, it's a pity, you're so good and you understand this work, but you're going to have to be a maid. One, because of your
Jesus.
accent, and two, because you're black. And I mean, but you need sometimes people to speak to you very plainly, so that you understand and everybody's aware of where the biases lie.
Mhm.
And as I said, I wasn't courageous enough to decide I was going to challenge those biases. If given the opportunity now, the kinds of films I want to see are films that, again, aren't didactic. They aren't the ones that are telling you this is the way you should think, this is the way you should believe, but that tell people's stories, tell women's stories in the Caribbean from all different classes, races, that tell men's stories. I'm always quite curious about masculinity in the region and how that often kind of, what is your personality outside of the performance of masculinity? Who gets to see that? Who gets to see you as you?
Yes.
Those are the things that always make me, I would love to do films and see films about that. So I live vicariously through my friends who were courageous enough to do it. And every now and then I get a chance to act or do voice over something.
Okay. That's
my
still
personal capacity with friends and family, and I take it.
That's good. Well, maybe, just maybe, we'll still get to see something by you.
Maybe, yes. You know what? Maybe.
So thank you, Tonni, so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I really enjoyed it and getting a closer look at, the important work being done by the UN. And I really look forward to seeing the new initiatives and maybe a film.
Thank you. It was really a pleasure to speak to you, and sorry for all of those of you listening. I really have to say, Shak, listen to Shak, because the effort that goes into making sure that you get who you need to speak to is amazing. And we tried and failed the first time, but we made it happen this time in spite of the care economy, in spite of everything else. So thanks for speaking to me and taking the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Perseverance is key.
Well said, yes.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to join us every other Wednesday for another episode of Shak. Subscribe to our podcast using your favorite podcast platform. We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can also connect with us on IG, Facebook, and Twitter, or by email at akilia@shakshak.club. Let's shake things up.